Hello and welcome to episode 7 of The Week That Was, a weekly program on which we review the news headlines of the week. To discuss this week's headlines, we have with us well-known journalist and group editor of the Herald Group of Publication, Mr. Sujay Gupta. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
This week, we begin with December 30th on Thursday, where there was an dastardly attack on the iconic shack of Souza Lobo. And not only that, there was a huge gang which attacked with swords. There were gunshots which are heard. There was violence, bottles and sticks. And not only that, the owners have claimed that they were offered 40 crore to move away, to leave this Goan business and get away from here.
See, the core of the problem lies in the fact that the policing system and the governance of different areas have become absolute slaves to the powers that be, in the sense that when politically powerful people and economically powerful people, not just from Goa but from other states, especially from other states, have been coming and involving themselves in huge projects, whether they be construction projects or nightlife projects or hotels and restaurants and what have you. If you see the whole Kalangut, Baga and that entire belt, mainly the Kalangut and the Shioli constituencies, have seen a huge surge in this kind of rampant construction. Construction, zone changes and so on and so forth. This has led to the whole predominance of a lot of very economically powerful people from other states who are now controlling the system, as opposed to Goans controlling the system. So what is happening is Goan interests are getting completely subverted, and not only are they getting subverted, the Goans have absolutely no voice. Even if there's an illegal activity going on which hurts them completely, they don't have the wherewithal, and I'm using the word wherewithal with responsibility, to actually go to the police and get things done. So I think the genesis of this is very interesting, because in Souza Lobo, a Delhi-based builder, he has set up, or he has started another club of sorts right next to it. And according to the Souza Lobo owners, and who've also made various complaints to the police and others, their basically traditional access to this iconic Goan shack has been has been blocked because of, and not only this, skirmishes have been going on for a long time. And rather than Souza Lobo people getting justice, they are actually getting victimized. And there have been not one, not two, but three such attacks on the shack over a period of.
So do you see that there is a possible political link to this?
No, there is no. It's not a question of being possible. There is a political link to it. How can these activities be done without the patronage of the local MLA Michael Lobo? Michael Lobo can deny it. He can say that he's all for Goans. But the point is that even if he says that there is no patronage, fine, I accept it. But then he needs to answer as to why this rampant illegal activity is going on. How could Goan owners, and I'm not saying they are right because they are Goan, but they have been existing there for a long time, and their access is stopped. So there's an apparent blatant violation and victimization of an iconic Goan shack. It can be anything, but in this case it also happens to be Souza Lobo, a name synonymous with tourism and the shack business in Goa. So if you're a representative of the people and something of this sort is happening and it has not been sorted out, isn't it your duty as an MLA to give justice, or at least intervene? How can a new entity from outside come and wield so much of power? And obviously what I'm saying, or what any others are saying, or Souza Lobo is saying, for instance, there is substance to it, because the PI of the police station has been subsequently suspended. I think 2 or 3 other junior officers have also been suspended. So there is obviously a prima facie case of negligence and of omissions and commissions in the police system.
On Friday 31st, Herald carries a headline, COVID knocking on the doors of Goa's party scene. And we have these instances of warnings that were put forth that there would be increase in cases, but still, even after denying, the political class has said that no official sanction has been given. But anybody who was in Goa on 31st of December would see there was wild partying to welcome the new year. But be that as it may, there are hundreds and thousands of tourists and there are images and videos which are floating that there was gay abandon, there were no precautions taken during these celebrations.
Which is right. In fact, we made it a point to send teams. In fact, our teams went and spent the entire night gathering footage of what was happening, and what was shocking is that there was not even a pretense of any safety. They were I know for a fact that there were random thermal checks, but when you have 100 people entering a particular venue, and venue is extremely small. I mean, the entrance to all venues are not very big. Yeah. When you have about 100 people entering a venue in 1 minute, how many thermal checks can you do? My issue is, out of 100 people going, if you see a temperature spike even in one, by the time you even realize that the temperature spike, the next person comes. So the thermal check is completely a farce. Yeah. So your thermal check is not valid because it's done in this way. People are not wearing masks and there are no checks. Forget social distancing. I don't even know whether they're hand sanitizers. But how do you even do this? The only way this could have been done was a major government exercise to clamp down on the number of people who are entering particular night spots. But the government, on the other hand, they were also under pressure from the nightclub owners, because they said that if we don't earn in the next 2-3 days, our business are going to get completely stumped. But what has happened is, by allowing that huge spike in those 3-4 days, Goa is paying the price for it. Goans are paying the price for it, because the majority of the people who crowded the streets of Baga, Kalangud, Morjim, wherever, what have you, the majority of them were rebels from outside the state who have come back. They have done two things. They will, in their interactions, will also pass on the virus to locals, because they're interacting with shopkeepers, they're interacting with bar owners, they're interacting with others. So they're infusing those virus into the system, and at the same time they're taking back the virus back to their home state, so wherever they are. So it's absolutely huge. So the whole thing of having a lockdown now or a curfew now is absolutely meaningless, because the cases are going through the roof now. You can say it's not as dangerous and so on and so forth, but the point that we need to really look at is that by opening the doors at that point of time and temporarily shutting the doors now, it's like locking the stables after the horses have bolted, and the horses have clearly bolted, leaving disease here. And that is something which we just don't seem to realize, and these are mistakes that we are committing every time.
During this program, we also moved from the old year 2021 into 2022. On 1st of January, that was Saturday, we have a headline here in the Herald: "Mining dump policy is unconstitutional," says Goa Foundation Director Claude Alvarez. Now, there are many points to this. First of all, he says that clearing of or disposition of these dumps is before the Supreme Court, so therefore this exercise is illegal. He also says that something which is worth 200 crores, which is, he estimates it to be 120 million tons of dump ore which is existing. So something worth 200 crores is being siphoned off for just 20 crores, and they are ready to challenge it.
Yeah, okay. So I'll just explain this a little bit for the benefit of our viewers. You see, what really does this mean? It means that mining lease owners who had dumped ore outside their mining leases, excess ore or whatever, low grade ore or stuff that they could not export, or stuff that they had already mined and were unable to send out, that ore has been kept on mining outside the mining leases. Okay. What the government has done is, they have now allowed them to pick up that ore lying outside the mining leases to further export them. Now the question that arises here is that who is going to export them? The mining lease holders. But are there any mining leases? As of now, there is not a single lease available in the state, because all litigations have been exhausted. The Supreme Court has very categorically stated that there is not a single valid lease in Goa at this point of time. The leases will not be renewed. In this situation, when the government tells a erstwhile mining lease holder that you can move your ore and take it to the jetty and export it, who are they giving the permission to? At the end of the day, it is the mines department which has to write a letter to a particular entity, which is the mining lease holder, saying that please move your ore from point A to the jetty for export or whatever, the permission to transport and export. But when the lease itself does not exist, because each dump is linked to a particular lease, but when the lease itself is not valid, on what basis can that permission to export be done? It is like me telling you that you can send furniture from your house to another state when you are not even the owner of that house. It's as simple as that. So this is exactly simply put. Now coming to the amount, they have said that the entire value is 200 crores. The entire value is far more than that, because we've done some back of the book calculations, and I have done this myself. So if you look at the current prices of say 58 grade ore, and if you look at what the value is, the calculation, the back of the book calculation is that for roughly 1 million tons, it's going to be about say 200 crores or whereabout. Whatever be the case, I'm getting into absolute mathematical details now, but what is sure, the back of the book calculations is that the total value is going to be far more than what the government has even said. It's going to be much more. So we also need to ask is that if the government is going to earn much more than what they have declared, where is the money going to? And is the money finally going to the government in what form? Is it going to the district mineral fund? Is it going to the mineral corporation, which is yet to be set up properly? So we need to answer these questions, because ultimately it's people's resource. So what Claude Alvarez has said is totally right. So it is up to the government and the mining companies to explain on how they want to work this thing out. Otherwise, it appears to be just a smokescreen to get some money in before the elections.
On January 2nd, we have this headline in the Herald that police register the Siddhi Naik death case as murder. Now, this is an issue which Herald has been fighting along with the family to get justice for Siddhi Naik. Do you think that this is a change in stance from the government? Is it that the change of the new year has brought in change of intentions of the government?
I really doubt that there's any change of intentions. The only intention is the February assembly elections. And do understand, we all know that when you register a case, that doesn't mean anything till the case is actually solved. All the government has done is they've registered a murder case, they let it lie like this, they will wait for the elections to get over and then slowly bury it. If I know the way the government functions, unless we continue to put pressure, unless the family continues to put pressure, unless newspapers like us and hopefully other media take the case up, the pressure will not be there. Right now, what they have done is they have done it to pacify people who've been demanding it to be registered as a murder probe for some time. Wait till the elections get over and let us see. We of course we do not know which government is going to come to power, but we will wait and see whether this particular murder case is investigated properly and then ultimately solved. Because do understand that if they were serious about registering this as a murder case, they would have done it in the first instance. By not preserving the viscera, by not looking at the CCTV footage, apparently the CCTV footage near the Kalangut beach was not even working properly. There was no CCTVs working. So there is nothing on evidence to show the circumstances which led to the victim being found on the beach, or the viscera is not preserved. With that, your biggest tool of investigation completely goes. So I really wonder how this case is going to be completely tracked, unless it's circumstantial, unless you have key witnesses coming up. It's going to be a long call. But let the investigations go on. But I have serious doubts about the intent, because the delay itself is reason enough to suspect the government's motives.
So we also hope that this case does not become a political case, and we hope that she gets justice finally.
Yes, I mean, see, a case like this is bound to be a political case, because the opposition will be up in arms. They'll try to get mileage out of it to attack the ruling party. The politics will play do its dance on the periphery, but at the core of it is a father and the mother's quest for justice for a daughter they have lost, and they feel very rightly that she has been done to death. So I think one shouldn't lose focus from that. In spite of any political noise that can be around it, the focus should be on justice for that girl and for the parents.
Then we come to January 4th, the day on which this episode is being shot. In Herald, we have this headline that government is considering night curfew. Now, if you look at the number of cases which have come up and how they have multiplied, some days back we had 100 new cases of COVID reported in a single day. The next day you have 388 cases, and just yesterday, that is 3rd of January, we have a spike of 631 cases, which is about 26.43% spike. Now, do you think that the government's initiative is too little too late, because now the cases have already blown up and
see, Dr. Freddy, the figures speak for themselves. From a 5% spike to a 10% spike to a 26% spike in a matter of 4 days, it's huge. So cases are obviously spreading, and in the last topic that we took up on the whole issue of super spreaders and what happened during New Year's, and I think that has played a very big part in this. Yes, it's too little too late. As we said, the clampdown should have happened in that important week from 24th of December to the 1st of January. I think that should have been the time when there should have been some kind of a restriction or curfew, and we are just completely paying the price for that. All we can do is to just keep the hospitals ready, though one has not seen too many alarming cases of Omicron or deaths. But the point is, we can't be too sure. So let us keep all the health systems intact. Let us impose this particular night curfew with as much seriousness as it deserves, so that at least it doesn't become a lip service. And at the same time, one needs to look at every establishment, not just local establishments, but also things like casinos and others, as to how many people are actually going there. Should they be? I mean, they should be very strict to see that that 11 o'clock curfew applies to every establishment, and there is no other activity in those areas. So we need to look at these things extremely seriously, because if it's a half-hearted attempt, then it really won't work. But as I will repeat this again and again, that the problem happened by allowing that rampant surge of people, or the influx of people to come into Goa during the 25th to 31st in the name of economy. You have once again made the same mistake of making Goans vulnerable because of that.
Now, two questions which some of our viewers may have. One is this vaccination of the 15 to 18-year-old which is taking place. How safe is this? And the second issue would be whether we are heading for complete lockdown.
See, as far as vaccination is concerned, there is a mixed opinion on it. There cannot be any black and white issue, because some parents are very right in being skeptical about it, about saying that, look, we don't really quite know what the effectiveness of the vaccine is going to be. Some parents have even gone to the extent of saying that they are doing this vaccination just to clear the old stock. There are many things going on. To be honest, we don't really have the right answers. But at the same time, I would say that vaccination, again, it is a prerogative of parents as far as children are concerned. Let that prerogative remain with them. You cannot have force, especially in the time of skepticism. But at the same time, if there are certain restrictions that need to be taken to ensure that only vaccinated people get into certain spaces, those restrictions should also be respected by those who opt not to take vaccines. If you opt not to take vaccines, it's your choice. But then if there are public restrictions on not getting non-vaccinated people in, that also has to be respected, because that's the choice of people who want greater levels of safety. So let's put it this way. So both ways it works. So it is still an issue in progress. But one thing that cannot ever be accepted or tolerated, and it's a criminal act, if these vaccines are being pushed to clear old stock. If there's any iota of truth in that, then that is something very serious, and that needs to be done. I hope that is not the case. Let the government come up and clarify. A lot of things happen if you come and honestly clarify that. If the clarification is done, then it's absolutely fine. If not, then it leaves the scope of doubt.
But are we moving towards another lockdown?
It's too early to say. See, what happens is the government of the day will have alarm bells set off only when deaths start happening. If deaths start happening, then panic completely sets in. We still need to track how this goes. The way it is looking, and everybody has said the third wave is already in. If the third wave is in and cases completely spike, more and more people fall sick. But if that sickness reaches dangerous levels, we also have to see the recovery rate. If the recovery rate is close to 100% or just close to 100%, then total lockdown will not be necessary. Because people are falling sick, isolating themselves, recovering and coming back into the system. if that is the case, then a total lockdown is not advisable, given the nature of what had happened. If it gets worse, obviously the powers that be, the task force, and governments will take a call. But you cannot say that let us take a risk and be unsafe at the cost of anything. Because you can open the economy now, but if it shuts down forever later and more people fall sick, then it's too heavy a price to pay.
So that was the week that we are discussing from December 30th to January 4th. I'm afraid that's all we can pack this week. I thank my guest, Mr. Sujay Gupta, for his useful insights and analysis. You can watch us on Herald TV and on YouTube and subscribe to our channel. Thank you for watching. We'll be back again next week. Thank you. Keep watching Herald TV.